Veronica always knew something was wrong.
Now.
Standing in the doorway with fury blazing in her eyes,
Trust me.
Aunt Miranda pointed an accusing finger at the trembling girl kneeling before her. I always suspected it, Miranda hissed, with venom dripping from every word. You're nothing but trouble. You want to destroy my son. The young girl's voice broke as she pleaded desperately. No, Aunt Miranda, please listen to me. I never meant for this to happen. I was exhausted beyond measure. It was a terrible accident. I could never deliberately harm little Tommy, but Miranda's rage only intensified. You're lying to my face. You're cursed just like your entire bloodline. Ever since the day you entered my world, nothing but misfortune has followed. First, your parents were taken from this earth, and now you're trying to take my precious boy from me too. Pack your belongings and leave my house immediately. Veronica shook her head violently from side to side, her tears flowing like an unstoppable river down her cheeks. Please, I'm begging you, Aunt Miranda. I have absolutely nowhere else in this world to go. I don't have a single person who cares about me. Please don't throw me out onto the streets. But Miranda had already made up her mind, her heart sealed shut against any compassion. She stormed into Veronica's cramped bedroom, grabbed the worn bag containing the girl's few possessions, and marched back to throw it violently outside. The contents spilled across the cold ground in a pathetic display. Then she seized Veronica roughly by her thin arm and dragged her toward the exit. Aunt Miranda, please have mercy, Veronica sobbed, the words barely escaping through her constricted throat. It was an honest mistake. I had no evil intentions whatsoever. I'm so deeply sorry. Please reconsider this decision. Miranda's response was as cold as ice. You should have considered the consequences before you injured my baby. Now get out of my sight. With those final cruel words, she shoved Veronica through the doorway and slammed the door with such force that it seemed to shake the entire house. Before we continue with Veronica's heartbreaking journey, we want to welcome everyone watching this video right now. Our channel specializes in sharing meaningful African folktales that carry timeless wisdom and powerful life lessons. If this is your first time here with us, we would truly appreciate it if you could take a moment to like this video, share it with friends and family who might enjoy it, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another incredible story. We absolutely love reading your comments and thoughts, so please feel free to share what you think about today's tale in the comments section below. Your engagement means the world to us and helps our channel grow. Now let's return to Veronica's story and discover what happens next in her difficult journey. Veronica had once been a joyful child, the apple of her father's eye and the light of his life. But when death cruelly stole her mother away from them, everything in her world transformed completely. The bright, cheerful girl became withdrawn and silent, retreating into herself as grief consumed her young heart. She clung desperately to her father, Mr. James, who became her only source of comfort in a world that suddenly felt cold and empty. Mr. James did absolutely everything within his power to restore his daughter's happiness. He never compromised when it came to her well-being, always putting her needs first. She meant more to him than anything else in the entire universe. Because he desperately wanted to fill the gaping void in their home and heal the wound in Veronica's heart, he decided to marry again. The woman he chose was named Miranda, and she entered their lives like a ray of warm sunshine after a long, dark storm, taking the place that Veronica's mother had left behind. Gradually, the overwhelming sadness that had hung over their house like a heavy cloud began to lift and dissipate. Miranda treated Veronica with genuine affection and tender care. She would spend hours in the kitchen baking Veronica's favorite chocolate chip cookies from scratch, read enchanting bedtime stories to her every night until she drifted off to sleep, and take her on exciting trips to the local park where they would laugh together and play for hours. She regularly surprised Veronica with thoughtful little presents that made the girl's eyes sparkle with pure delight. Mr. James observed this beautiful transformation with immense relief and happiness spreading through his chest. His beloved daughter was returning to her former self, slowly but surely coming back to life again. The dinner table was no longer a place of uncomfortable silence and hidden tears. Instead, their home overflowed with genuine laughter, comfortable warmth, and abundant joy that seemed to fill every single corner and crevice. For quite some time, it genuinely felt like they had become the perfect family unit. But just when life appeared to be improving and heading in a positive direction, death came knocking on their door once more with its cruel, unforgiving hand. This time, it ruthlessly took Veronica's father away from her forever. Mr. James perished tragically in a devastating plane crash while returning home from an important business meeting in Dubai. The shocking news completely shattered their household into a million pieces. An oppressive silence descended upon every room in the house. What had once been a home filled with happiness and life now echoed with nothing but profound sorrow and grief. Veronica cried with such intensity that her eyes burned and stung. She cried until her voice completely disappeared, and she could barely make a sound. Within just a few short months, both of her beloved parents had been ripped away from her existence. Why did death have to be so mercilessly cruel? Why did it always seem to target the people she loved most deeply? Miranda was absolutely devastated as well, her heart breaking into countless fragments. Her eyes remained perpetually red and swollen from the endless streams of tears that refused to stop flowing. She sat completely alone in the bedroom she had shared with her husband, clutching something tightly in her trembling hands. It was a pregnancy test, showing two unmistakable, bold lines. She had been planning to surprise Mr. James with the wonderful news. She had spent days dreaming about the magical moment when she would tell him he was going to become a father again, imagining the pure joy that would light up his face. But now all she could do was stare blankly at those two lines through her tears. The tears continued streaming down her face in an unstoppable flood. He would never get to hear this news. He would never return home to meet his child. In that devastating moment, the house that had once contained so much laughter and brilliant light was completely drowned in suffocating grief. The joy that had previously overflowed from every room had vanished entirely, leaving behind nothing except excruciating pain and deafening silence that pressed down on everyone. The news of Mr. James's unexpected death spread rapidly throughout the community, like wildfire racing through dry grass. It was absolutely heartbreaking information that deeply shocked everyone who had known him personally. The tragedy affected his numerous business partners, all the dedicated workers at his company, his close circle of friends, and most devastatingly of all, his family members who loved him dearly. The day of Mr. James's funeral arrived cold and gray, with heavy clouds hanging low in the sky, as if nature itself was mourning his passing. Family members, friends from many years, and business associates gathered together with hearts weighed down by sorrow, all dressed in somber black clothing. Soft, melancholic music played quietly in the background as his coffin was carefully lowered into the earth. Veronica held tightly onto Miranda's hand, her small body shaking uncontrollably with silent sobs that racked her entire frame. Tears streamed continuously down Miranda's face as she gently placed a single white rose on top of the coffin as a final gesture of love. People standing nearby whispered fond memories of Mr. James, recalling his exceptional kindness, his warm and genuine smile, and his remarkable generosity toward others. Veronica stepped forward on unsteady legs, her voice trembling with emotion, and whispered her final goodbye. "Farewell, Papa." The moment felt as though the entire world had come to a complete stop, and hearts throughout the gathering broke all over again with fresh waves of grief. Days slowly transformed into weeks, and the acute pain of loss refused to fade away or diminish in the slightest. If anything, it only grew heavier and more suffocating with each passing day. Veronica desperately tried to remain close to Miranda, hoping with all her heart that together they could find some comfort in each other and help ease their mutual suffering. But something fundamental within Miranda began to change in troubling ways. The warmth and affection she had once displayed so freely started to disappear bit by bit. Her genuine smiles faded away completely. Her laughter died out entirely. Every single time she looked at Veronica now, her eyes filled not with the love they once held, but with something far darker and more troubling. It was blame. One evening, as Veronica sat quietly in the living room, clutching her father's old sweater close to her chest for comfort, Miranda walked past her, wearing an expression of complete coldness. Veronica looked up hopefully, silently praying for a hug or at least some gentle, kind words to ease her pain. But instead, Miranda spoke with shocking harshness. If your father hadn't needed to travel because of you and your constant needs, he would still be alive today. Veronica's heart felt like it dropped straight through the floor. She couldn't understand what she was hearing. But he traveled for his work, not because of me, Veronica responded softly, her voice trembling with confusion and hurt. Miranda's response was sharp and cutting. Don't you dare talk back to me like that. Her voice carried pain, anger, and something much darker lurking beneath the surface. From that terrible day forward, the atmosphere in the house underwent another dramatic transformation. The love that had once wrapped around Veronica like a protective, warm blanket had completely vanished into thin air. Miranda stopped reading bedtime stories to her entirely. She stopped baking those special cookies that Veronica loved so much. The fun outings they used to enjoy together, the genuine laughter they had shared, the thoughtful little gifts Miranda used to give her, they all disappeared as if they had never existed in the first place. The home that had once brought Veronica back to life after her mother's death now became a place that slowly suffocated her spirit day by day. Miranda's pregnancy continued to progress, but instead of bringing joy and anticipation into the household, it only filled her with increasing bitterness and resentment. She blamed Veronica for absolutely everything that had gone wrong. She blamed her for Mr. James's tragic death, for her own crushing loneliness, for her heartbreak that wouldn't heal. Little Veronica, who was only 10 years old at the time, had absolutely no idea how to fix any of these problems or make things better. She only knew how to cry silently in her bed at night, holding her father's sweater close against her face, whispering desperately into the darkness, "Papa, please come back to me somehow." As Miranda's belly grew larger and larger with each passing week, everything about her personality and behavior changed dramatically. She became increasingly slow in her movements, constantly tired and unwilling to exert any effort, refusing to lift even a simple glass of water for herself. Instead of asking for help politely or hiring proper assistance, she transformed Veronica into her personal servant. One morning when Veronica came downstairs, hoping that perhaps yesterday's troubles had passed and things might be different today, she found no breakfast waiting for her. Instead, there was a long, detailed list of household chores sitting on the dining table. Before you're allowed to eat even a single bite, finish everything written on that list, Miranda commanded, without even bothering to look up or make eye contact. Veronica picked up the paper with hands that trembled slightly. Sweep the entire house from top to bottom. Wash all the dirty dishes piled in the sink. Clean every single bathroom thoroughly. Complete all the laundry. Mop all the floors until they shine. The list seemed to go on endlessly. But I have to attend school today, Veronica whispered as softly as possible, afraid of the response she might receive. Miranda's eyes snapped up sharply, filled with irritation. Then wake up much earlier tomorrow. Your education is not my concern or problem to deal with. Veronica lowered her head in submission. Yes, ma'am, she replied quietly. She cleaned and scrubbed and worked until her arms ached so badly she thought they might actually fall off. She was absolutely starving, her stomach growling loudly. But she didn't dare ask for any food or complain about her hunger. When she finally managed to finish every task and tried to leave for school, Miranda stopped her right at the front door. Where exactly do you think you're going dressed like that? Miranda sneered with obvious disdain. Your school uniform is completely wrinkled and looks terrible. Do you want everyone to think you're living on the streets like some homeless child? Go back inside immediately and iron it properly. Veronica glanced down at her uniform. It honestly wasn't in terrible condition, just slightly creased from being worn, but she knew better than to argue or disagree. She returned to the ironing board without a word, her tears falling silently onto the fabric as she worked. School had become the only place remaining where she could breathe freely and feel somewhat normal. But even there, she appeared increasingly pale, exhausted, and weak with each passing day. The bright, cheerful version of Veronica had completely disappeared. Now she sat by herself during breaks, quiet and withdrawn, keeping her distance from everyone. Her smiles had vanished entirely from her face. Every single evening, when she returned home from school, It was always exactly the same disappointing routine. You're late getting back. Go straight to the kitchen immediately. You didn't wash these dishes properly at all. Do them over again. Don't just stand there looking completely useless. Move faster. The affectionate nickname Princess that she once heard spoken with genuine love had disappeared forever. Now Miranda said her actual name as if it tasted like dirt in her mouth. Days slowly transformed into weeks. Weeks gradually turned into months. The house that once felt wonderfully warm and overflowing with love had slowly transformed into a place of never-ending chores, cruel and harsh words, and cold silence that seemed to seep into everything. Veronica was still living under the same roof technically, but in every way that truly mattered, she was completely and utterly alone. When the time finally arrived, Miranda gave birth to a baby boy whom she named Tommy. Strangely, no friends came by to visit and celebrate. No family members stopped by to see the new baby and offer congratulations. Miranda didn't seem to mind this isolation at all, but Veronica couldn't stop herself from wondering why everyone seemed to be staying away. Veronica, despite absolutely everything she had already endured and suffered through, still held on to a small spark of hope deep inside. She hoped desperately that perhaps things would finally change for the better now that the baby had arrived. She hoped that maybe her suffering would finally come to an end. But she was completely wrong in that hope. Instead of any improvement, things became dramatically worse than before. Miranda essentially turned Veronica into an unpaid nanny and servant. One morning, Veronica woke up extremely early while her body still ached from the previous day's work, but she forced herself to push through the pain and complete all her assigned chores. She washed everything that needed washing, cleaned every surface that needed cleaning, cooked all the meals, and got herself ready for school, which remained her only precious escape from this nightmare. Just as she was preparing to walk out the front door to catch her bus, Miranda emerged from her bedroom, fully dressed for work, with baby Tommy cradled in her arms. "Take him from me," she ordered without any warmth in her voice. Veronica's hands trembled noticeably as she carefully took the tiny baby into her arms. "Make absolutely certain he doesn't cry while I'm gone. I'm leaving now." "But Aunt Miranda, I need to go to school today," Veronica whispered, her eyes silently begging for understanding and mercy. Miranda smiled in response, but it wasn't a kind or warm smile at all. It was cold and mocking, designed to hurt. "No, sweetheart, there's no school for you today. Actually, there's no more school for you at all anymore. Not until I decide to allow it. Your new permanent job is taking complete care of my son." Veronica's heart seemed to drop straight into her stomach. "No, Aunt Miranda, please listen. I can't do this. I'm not trained to be a nanny, and you've been treating me so terribly," Veronica said, somehow gathering courage she didn't even know existed within her. The sharp sound of a slap echoed loudly throughout the entire house. "How dare you speak to me in that disrespectful tone?" Miranda spat angrily, her face twisted with rage. "You're nothing but a child. You will follow my rules without question. Your parents are both gone forever. Nobody is coming to rescue you or help you. If you want to continue having a roof over your head and food to eat, you'll do exactly what I tell you to do." Miranda glared at her with pure hatred one final time before turning and walking straight out the door, which slammed shut behind her with tremendous force. Veronica collapsed onto the floor, tears flowing freely and uncontrollably. She looked down at baby Tommy, who was innocent and completely unaware of the terrible situation. But all she could feel was the heavy, oppressive shadow of his mother's hatred hanging over everything. She cried and cried with her entire body shaking, desperately wishing that the ground would just open up and swallow her completely. From that devastating day onward, Veronica's true suffering and hardship began in earnest. She tied baby Tommy securely to her small back using a long piece of cloth and worked tirelessly in every single corner of this house. She swept floors, washed dishes and clothes, cooked all the meals, and scrubbed every surface until everything gleamed, day after exhausting day. Her tiny body ached constantly in ways that a child's body should never ache. But even worse than the physical pain was the way her heart ached with loneliness and sadness. Every single night without fail, she cried herself to sleep while clutching her parents' photograph close to her chest. She wished with all her might that her father had never chosen to remarry. She wished she could somehow go back in time and rewrite her entire life story. She wished that someone, absolutely anyone in the world, would appear and save her from this nightmare. But no wishes came true no matter how hard she wished. And the house that once held so much love and happiness now felt exactly like a cage from which she could never possibly escape. One particular evening, Veronica was completely exhausted beyond measure. She had been working continuously since early morning, and her tiny body simply could no longer hold on or keep going. She sat down on the couch with baby Tommy resting beside her, and without meaning to or intending it, she fell deeply asleep from the sheer exhaustion. A loud, heavy thud suddenly hit the floor, breaking the silence. Then came an ear-piercing, panicked cry from the baby. Veronica's eyes flew wide open instantly. Her heart jumped violently in absolute fear and panic. Tommy was lying on the ground, crying loudly and pitifully. He must have somehow rolled off the couch while she slept. "Oh no, please stop crying," she whispered frantically as she rushed over to him with her heart pounding wildly. She scooped him up quickly into her arms, cradling him carefully. His little forehead was noticeably red and already beginning to swell rapidly. The sight of it made her chest tighten painfully, and she felt as though she couldn't catch her breath properly. "What should I do?" she whispered to herself, her voice shaking with fear and panic. If Miranda discovered this, if she found out that Veronica had fallen asleep while supposedly watching the baby, she would absolutely never forgive her. The consequences would be severe. She looked around the room frantically, tears already beginning to fill her eyes and blur her vision. Then a desperate idea suddenly came to her mind. She ran as fast as she could to the cupboard and pulled out the first aid box with trembling hands. Sitting down on the floor carefully, she placed Tommy gently in her lap. She took out a small bottle of healing ointment and began rubbing it softly and carefully onto his swollen forehead, blowing cool air onto it repeatedly the same way her father used to do for her whenever she got hurt as a small child. "It's going to be okay. Please stop crying now. Please," she begged him quietly, rocking him back and forth carefully in her arms. But the baby's cries only grew louder, filling the entire house with their sound. They were loud, painful cries that echoed off all the walls. Every single wail made Veronica's heart pound harder and faster in her chest. Miranda would be arriving home from work soon. Veronica's hands continued shaking uncontrollably. Tears rolled steadily down her cheeks. Fear wrapped itself around her like an impossibly tight rope that was squeezing the life out of her. "Please, Tommy," she whispered desperately, her voice breaking apart. "Please stop crying. Please don't let her come home right now." But fate had never listened to Veronica's prayers or wishes before, and it wasn't about to start now. The clock kept ticking forward relentlessly. The sound of the baby's loud crying still echoed throughout the air when Miranda suddenly stormed into the living room like a hurricane. Her eyes swept quickly over the entire scene before her, taking in Tommy's obviously swollen forehead and Veronica's tear-stained, guilty face, and something inside her completely snapped. "I always knew it deep down," she spat viciously. "You're pure evil. You want to harm my precious child." No, Aunt Miranda, please listen to me," Veronica cried out desperately, dropping immediately to her knees on the hard floor. "I truly didn't mean for this to happen. I was so tired I couldn't stay awake. It was a complete accident. I would never deliberately hurt Tommy, ever." "You're lying straight to my face, you liar," Miranda screamed at the top of her lungs. "You're nothing but a witch who brings misfortune. Ever since the day you entered my life, absolutely everything has gone completely wrong. Your parents both died tragically, and now you want to take my baby away from me too. You're leaving this house at this very moment." Veronica shook her head frantically from side to side, tears falling like heavy rain. "Please, Aunt Miranda, I'm begging you. I don't have anywhere else in this entire world to go. I don't have anyone who cares about me. Please don't send me away onto the streets." But Miranda either didn't hear her desperate pleas, or perhaps she heard them perfectly well and simply didn't care at all. She marched directly into Veronica's cramped little room, grabbed the worn bag that contained all her clothes and possessions, and came back to the front door. Without giving it a second thought or a moment of hesitation, she flung the bag violently outside onto the ground. The belongings inside scattered and spread across the cold ground in every direction. Then she grabbed Veronica roughly and painfully by her thin arm and dragged her forcefully toward the doorway. "Aunt Miranda, please have mercy," Veronica sobbed uncontrollably, choking on her own words. "It was an honest mistake. I didn't have any bad intentions whatsoever. I'm so sorry. Please don't do this to me. You should have thought about the consequences before you injured my baby," Miranda shouted back, her voice sharp and cutting with pure fury. "Now get out of my sight immediately." She pushed Veronica hard through the doorway and slammed the heavy door shut with all the anger and force she could muster. Veronica stood there, staring at the closed door in complete disbelief, unable to process what had just happened. Her heart felt like it was literally breaking into thousands of tiny pieces inside her chest. She knocked weakly on the door with her small fist. "Please, I don't have anywhere to go. Please open the door." But Miranda's voice came from inside the house, cold and absolutely final. "Go away from here. You are not wanted in this house anymore." Those cruel words pierced straight through Veronica's heart like thousands of sharp needles all at once. The night breeze began blowing hard and cold, chilling her skin through her thin clothes. Her body was so small and fragile, her heart was completely shattered into pieces. She wiped her endless tears with shaking hands and bent down slowly to pick up her small bag from where it had fallen. Every single movement felt incredibly heavy and difficult, filled with overwhelming pain. She understood with absolute certainty that Miranda would never open that door again, no matter how much she begged. Completely alone, utterly abandoned, and trembling from cold and fear, Veronica stepped away slowly from the house that had once held warmth and love, but had now become a place that had thrown her out into the darkness without a second thought. Just like that, under the silent night sky with stars looking down, her long and incredibly painful journey truly began in earnest. Veronica walked aimlessly down the lonely, empty street with no destination in mind. The cold wind brushed harshly against her tiny exposed arms. The moon hanging in the sky was the only source of light guiding her uncertain steps forward. Her heart felt completely empty and hollow, as if someone had reached inside her chest and taken everything she had ever possessed and crushed it into dust. Where would she go now? How would she possibly survive on her own? She was only 10 years old. Her confused thoughts swirled together like a violent storm inside her head. Her chest felt unbearably heavy, making it hard to breathe. Her legs moved forward without any clear direction or purpose. Her only home in the world had pushed her out without mercy. Her only family had turned their back on her completely. As she walked slowly down the dark street, she didn't notice or hear the car coming up behind her on the road. The loud horns suddenly blared, shattering the nighttime silence. Veronica turned her head quickly in surprise. Her small body was struck and hit the ground hard. Everything around her began spinning wildly and blurred together. Her ears rang loudly with a high-pitched sound. Her vision dimmed and grew darker. She could hear someone shouting something, but the voice sounded incredibly far away, as if it was coming from underwater. "Hey, hey little girl, can you hear me? Hey, please wake up." Her eyes fluttered weakly a few times. The world around her gradually grew quieter and quieter. Then complete silence and total darkness swallowed her whole, and she knew nothing more. Slowly and gradually, Veronica's eyes began to open. Everything felt impossibly heavy. Her head throbbed painfully. Her eyelids felt like they weighed tons. Even her breath felt heavy and labored. The room surrounding her was bright white, almost too bright to look at comfortably. The strong smell of medicine and disinfectant filled the air completely. She blinked several times in confusion, trying to figure out where she was. She realized she was lying on a hospital bed. A drip line was attached to her small arm with medical tape. Her body felt incredibly stiff and sore all over, as if she had been hit by a powerful storm. She tried to sit up, but an extremely sharp pain shot through her side, forcing her to fall back immediately onto the pillow with a gasp. Where was she? What had happened to her? Before she could think any more or try to figure anything out, the door clicked open quietly. A doctor stepped into the room, wearing a gentle, kind smile on his face. Beside him stood a tall man dressed in a neat black suit. His face appeared calm, but serious. "Oh, she's awake now," the doctor said softly, walking closer to her bed. Veronica's heart began racing wildly in her chest. She didn't know these people at all. She didn't know where she was or how she had gotten here. Her small fingers clenched the bedsheet tightly. The man in the black suit looked at her with clear concern in his eyes. Not anger or hatred, but genuine concern. For the first time in a very long while, someone was looking at her with kindness in their eyes. But Veronica didn't feel safe or comfortable yet. Her voice came out extremely small and shaky. "What happened to me?" The doctor pulled a chair closer and sat down near her bed. "You were hit by a car on the street," he explained gently. "But you're completely safe now. You're going to be perfectly okay. You were very lucky that someone brought you here to the hospital in time." Veronica swallowed hard, her throat dry. Lucky? The word felt strange and unfamiliar to her. She looked down at her tiny hands, which were bruised and trembling. The man in the black suit stepped forward slowly and carefully. "You don't need to be afraid of us," he said in a calm, reassuring voice. "I'm the person who saw you on the road. I brought you here to make sure you were okay." Veronica looked up at him, her eyes full of confusion, lingering fear, and the faintest spark of hope beginning to grow. For the first time in such a long time, someone had actually reached out to help her, even though she didn't understand why yet. The man in the black suit pulled a chair over and sat down beside her hospital bed, but he made sure not to come too close, respecting her space. He spoke slowly and carefully, as if he was afraid he might scare her. "My name is Mr. Richard," he said gently and kindly. "I was driving home late last night when I saw you walking alone on the dark road." He paused for a moment. "And then the accident happened. I didn't see you in time because it was so dark." Veronica's heart tightened painfully in her chest. So he was the person who had hit her with his car. Her fingers gripped the bedsheet even tighter than before. She waited for anger, for shouting, for blame to be placed on her. But absolutely none of that came. Instead, Mr. Richards sighed deeply, clear guilt showing plainly in his eyes. "I'm very, very sorry for what happened," he continued sincerely. "But when I saw you fall and hit the ground, I couldn't possibly leave you lying there on the road. I brought you here to the hospital immediately and paid for all your medical treatment." Veronica blinked in complete surprise. Someone had actually helped her. Someone had cared enough to do something. The doctor checked her drip line to make sure it was working properly. "You need plenty of rest," he said kindly. "You had some injuries from the accident, but you'll recover soon with proper care. You just need time to heal." When the doctor stepped out of the room, Mr. Richard remained seated in his chair. The room felt quiet, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. After a long moment, he spoke again, his voice soft and gentle. "Where were you going all alone at night like that?" Veronica's throat tightened up immediately. Her chest felt heavy again with all the painful emotions. She tried to speak, but the words got stuck and wouldn't come out. Then finally, in a small, trembling voice, she whispered barely loud enough to hear, "I don't have anywhere to go." Mr. Richards' eyebrows drew together with concern. "No home at all?" Veronica shook her head slowly from side to side. Her eyes began filling rapidly with tears. "My parents are both dead," she said, her voice breaking. "And my stepmother doesn't want me anymore. She threw me out." The silence in the room changed completely. It grew warm and filled with genuine sympathy, not pity. Mr. Richard looked at her as if she was something incredibly fragile and precious, something that had been hurt far too many times. "You're just a child," he whispered, clearly moved. Veronica tried desperately to wipe her tears away, but more kept falling to replace them. She had held everything inside for so terribly long, but now in front of this stranger who was showing her real kindness, her protective walls finally cracked and crumbled. Mr. Richard didn't reach out to touch her. He didn't force her to speak more or explain further. He simply sat there patiently, letting her cry and release her pain. After quite a while, his voice came again, soft but absolutely sure. You will not go back to that place. Veronica looked up in confusion, hope flickering weakly in her heart like a candle flame. Mr. Richards' eyes were firm, gentle, and sad all at the same time. You're safe now, he said with conviction. Nobody will hurt you again. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Veronica actually believed those words and felt a tiny bit of safety. Many days passed slowly and Veronica gradually grew stronger physically. Her bruises faded away and the sharp pain in her body eased considerably. But the deep pain in her heart still sat heavy like a massive stone she could not lift or move. Mr. Richard came to visit her every single day without fail. He always brought something small and thoughtful with him. Not fancy or expensive things, but meaningful ones. Sometimes it was a warm, delicious meal. Other times it was a new colorful hair ribbon or an interesting storybook to read. Sometimes he simply sat quietly beside her bed because he had noticed that Veronica was not used to loud voices or too many questions being asked. He never forced her to speak or share, but little by little, day by day, Veronica did begin to open up. One afternoon, the doctor walked into her room with a clipboard and a warm, encouraging smile. I have good news for you, he announced. You're well enough to leave the hospital now. Veronica nodded her head in acknowledgement, but panic immediately rose inside her chest like a wave. Leave the hospital, but go where exactly? Her eyes turned anxiously toward the door, as if she was expecting her father to walk through it at any moment, as if she was hoping her mother would somehow appear. But she knew with crushing certainty that they would never come. Mr. Richard immediately noticed the fear growing in her eyes. Veronica, he said softly, kneeling down beside her bed so he could look directly into her eyes, not down at her from above. I know you're scared right now. I know the world has not been kind to you at all. Veronica lowered her gaze, her small hands nervously twisting the blanket. But you are not alone anymore, he continued with warmth in his voice. If you will allow me, I want to help you build a better life. She slowly looked up at him, confused. What do you mean exactly? Her voice trembled with uncertainty. He took a slow, deep breath. I want you to come live with me in my home, not as a servant or a maid. His voice was steady, warm, and absolutely sure, but as a child who deserves love, safety, and a proper home. Veronica's lips parted slightly. She couldn't speak or form words. Nobody had used the word love around her in so incredibly long that it felt like something sacred and precious, something fragile, something she wasn't sure she deserved anymore. But why would you do that? She whispered in confusion. I'm not special in any way. I have nothing to offer you. Mr. Richards smiled warmly. Not a forced smile or a cold one, but a genuine smile that reached all the way to his eyes. You're just a little girl who has suffered far too much already, he said simply. That is reason enough for me. Tears filled Veronica's eyes once again, but this time they weren't from pain or sadness, but from the soft hope that was beginning to rise inside her chest for the first time. The doctor placed the discharge papers on the table and quietly stepped out of the room, giving them privacy. Continue. 1:46 p.m. 2:2. Mr. Richard reached out his hand toward her, not grabbing or pulling, just gently offering it to her. Veronica hesitated for several long moments. Her heart was terribly scared. Scared to trust another person again. Scared to hope for something better. But she remembered so clearly the door that had shut violently on her, leaving her outside in the cold. She remembered the street that had felt endless and terrifying. She remembered the silence that had felt exactly like death closing in around her. And then she looked carefully at the hand extended in front of her. It appeared warm, steady, and safe. Slowly, very slowly, she placed her small, trembling hand into his larger one. And for the first time since her beloved father had died, she felt like she had taken a genuine step toward a new beginning and a better future. Mr. Richard helped Veronica out of the hospital bed with great care, holding her hand carefully as if she were made of delicate glass that might shatter. They walked slowly through the long hallway together. Veronica was still physically weak, but she was standing on her own 2 feet. For the first time in a very long while, she wasn't walking completely alone. Outside the hospital, a cool breeze brushed gently across her face. It felt different this time compared to before. Not cold or painful, just gentle and almost comforting. Mr. Richard opened the car door for her politely, and she sat quietly in the passenger seat, staring out the window as the busy city passed by in a blur. Her worn bag sat on her lap. Everything she owned in the entire world fit inside that one small bag. She couldn't help but wonder if this was actually real or just a dream. What if he suddenly changed his mind? What if she ended up getting sent away again? Her fingers clung to the fabric tightly, holding on for dear life. Mr. Richard noticed her tension immediately. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said softly and reassuringly, never taking his eyes off the road ahead. "You're safe with me, Veronica. I promise you that." She didn't answer out loud, but her grip on the bag loosened just a little bit. Soon the car slowed down considerably and drove through a large iron gate that opened automatically for them. Veronica's eyes widened in amazement. The house standing in front of them was quite big, but it didn't feel cold or intimidating at all. Not like her father's house had been. This one had beautiful flowers planted carefully by the front door, warm yellow lights glowing invitingly from the windows, and a peaceful, calm silence surrounding it. It looked exactly like somewhere happiness could actually live and thrive. Mr. Richard got out of the car and walked around to her side, opening her door for her like a gentleman. Veronica stepped out very slowly, still feeling unsure about everything. Standing by the entrance was a woman who appeared to be in her late 20s with kind, sparkling eyes and soft curly hair. She smiled warmly when she saw Veronica standing there. "Oh, this must be her," she said with genuine warmth in her voice. "This is Sarah," Mr. Richard explained kindly. "She works with me at my company, and she also helps take care of the house." Sarah walked closer with a friendly smile and knelt down in front of Veronica so their eyes could meet at the same level. "Hello, sweetheart," she said in a gentle, soothing voice. "We're very happy to have you here with us." No one had spoken to Veronica like that in such a very long time. "Let me show you your room, okay?" Sarah offered. "Your room? Not the cold floor to sleep on, not the kitchen corner, not the cramped storage room. An actual room of her own." Veronica followed her inside the house, her heart beating faster. The house smelled wonderful, like vanilla and warmth and comfort. Sarah opened a door to reveal a small but absolutely beautiful room. The bed was neatly made, covered with soft, fluffy blankets. A cute teddy bear sat in the corner, waiting patiently as if it had been saving a special place just for her. Veronica froze completely in the doorway, her eyes immediately filling with tears. Sarah turned around quickly with concern. "Oh, did I do something wrong? Do you not like the room?" But Veronica shook her head vigorously from side to side, the tears now falling silently down her cheeks. Sarah's heart tightened with emotion. She gently wrapped her arms around Veronica in a warm embrace. Not too tight or forced, just enough to communicate clearly. "You're wanted here. You're safe." "It's okay to cry," Sarah whispered soothingly. "You are safe now. Everything is going to be okay." Veronica stood there completely still and even existed. Her tears soaked into Sarah's shoulder as she finally let herself feel. Downstairs, Mr. Richard watched from the doorway with a soft, satisfied smile on his face. For the first time in many years, Veronica slept that night in a bed that felt genuinely safe and comfortable. No shouting echoing through the house, no impossible chores waiting for her, no fear keeping her awake. Just quiet peace, just warmth surrounding her, just safety. And a tiny seed of hope began to grow inside her wounded heart, slowly but surely. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Miranda's life had taken a dramatically different turn. After sending Veronica away without mercy, she had wasted absolutely no time diving headfirst into luxury and excess. She shopped constantly at expensive designer stores, spent her afternoons relaxing at fancy spas, and went out with her friends almost every single night for entertainment. With Mr. James gone forever, she used his hard-earned money as if it would never run out or finish. For quite a while, her life looked absolutely perfect from the outside looking in. But perfection never lasts forever, and reality was about to catch up with her. The house, which had once been filled with warmth and proper care, began to fall apart piece by piece. Without Veronica there to clean and care for everything, the rooms became increasingly messy, dusty, and unpleasant smelling. Toys, dirty clothes, and unwashed plates piled up everywhere in chaotic heaps. Miranda didn't regret sending Veronica away because she missed her presence or felt guilty. No, she regretted it, purely because now all the housework was simply too much for her to handle alone. She tried hiring several different maids one after another, but absolutely none of them stayed for long. Either she shouted at them too harshly, or they quit because they couldn't handle her unreasonable demands and impossible standards. She didn't want genuine help or assistance. She wanted complete control over someone. She wanted someone she could command and order around like a slave, exactly the way she had done to poor Veronica. Every Saturday without fail, she paid expensive professional cleaners to come clean the entire house thoroughly. But those specialized services cost a tremendous amount of money, and the money was running out much more quickly than she had anticipated. The company that Mr. James had left behind, the successful business he had built with years of hard work and dedication, was crumbling and falling apart. Miranda had absolutely no idea how to properly manage it or run a business. Each passing day brought more problems. More workers resigned and left. Important projects were delayed indefinitely. Valuable clients left for competitors. Payments stopped coming in regularly. The company was heading straight toward complete bankruptcy at an alarming speed. Miranda found herself drowning in overwhelming stress and anxiety. Some nights she was simply too tired or too lazy to cook any proper meals. Baby Tommy cried endlessly, hungry and extremely uncomfortable. And Miranda had no idea how to calm him down or soothe him. She had no patience left, no energy remaining, and no one available to help her. The luxury lifestyle she had once enjoyed so much was slipping through her fingers like sand flowing through an hourglass. She sat on the living room floor one particularly difficult night, her hair messy and unkempt, her eyes swollen from stress and crying, dirty dishes piled absolutely everywhere around her, baby Tommy crying loudly in her tired arms, and for the first time ever, genuine fear crept into her heart. Life was no longer filled with glitter and gold and easy comfort, and for the very first time ever, Miranda realized with crushing weight that she had pushed away the only person who had truly cared for the home and kept everything running smoothly. But now Veronica was gone forever, and it was entirely her own fault. Veronica's life had changed in ways she never could have imagined possible. Mr. Richard was truly a gift sent from God above. He didn't just give her a roof over her head and basic shelter. He gave her genuine love. He gave her real safety. He gave her back her happiness in childhood. Sarah became much more than just a caretaker. She became a real mother figure in Veronica's life. She brushed Veronica's hair gently in the mornings, helped her patiently with schoolwork every evening, and held her close when she woke up crying from nightmares. Veronica's genuine laughter returned after being gone so long. Her smile became real again, warm and bright and full of life, exactly the way it used to be when her parents were alive. Sometimes Veronica would sit quietly by herself and think deeply, wondering how strangers she had met purely because of a terrible accident had become the loving family she had always prayed for. One peaceful evening, after a delicious dinner, Veronica was sitting on the living room floor, hugging her teddy bear tightly and giggling as she made it dance around playfully. Mr. Richard watched her from the comfortable couch, his face calm and thoughtful. "Veronica," he said softly to get her attention. She looked up at him immediately. "Yes, sir?" He smiled gently at her. "You can call me Dad if you want to. You don't have to call me sir." Her cheeks turned warm and pink. She looked down shyly, but after a moment she nodded her head. "Okay, Dad." The word felt strange and unfamiliar at first coming out of her mouth, but it also fit perfectly. It felt safe and right. Mr. Richard leaned forward slightly in his seat. "Veronica, I want to ask you something very important." His tone remained gentle, but became more serious. Veronica hugged her teddy bear closer to her chest and listened carefully with full attention. "It's about your stepmother," he said carefully. Immediately, Veronica's bright smile faded away completely. The room grew noticeably quiet and tense. "Can you tell me everything she did to you?" he asked gently but firmly, not to hurt her or make her relive the painful memories unnecessarily, but because he absolutely needed to know the truth. Veronica took a long, deep breath to steady herself. Her voice trembled noticeably at first, but she forced herself to speak. She told him about all the endless chores she was forced to do, about how she was forced to stop attending school completely, about carrying baby Tommy on her small back while scrubbing floors for hours, about the constant insults and cruel words, about the hard slap across her face, about the terrible night she was thrown outside into the cold darkness. Sarah stood quietly in the hallway just outside, listening to every word, her hand covering her mouth in shock and sorrow. Mr. Richards' jaw tightened visibly, controlled anger burning intensely in his eyes. Not wild, uncontrolled anger, but righteous fury at injustice. When Veronica finally finished her story, she looked up nervously, expecting judgment or pity in return. But Mr. Richard reached out gently and carefully wiped her tears away with his thumb. "You did absolutely nothing wrong," he said firmly and clearly. "What she did to you was cruel and completely unforgivable. No child should ever be treated that way." He stood up from the couch, determination hardening his voice significantly. "I will not let Miranda get away with this horrible treatment. Not after everything she has done to you. I promise you, Veronica, she will answer for her terrible actions." Veronica blinked in shock and surprise. Someone was finally standing up for her, fighting for her pain, believing her story. She whispered, her voice soft and shaky with emotion. "Thank you so much, Dad." And Mr. Richard placed a gentle, protective hand on top of her head. "You are safe now," he said with absolute conviction. "And I promise you that no one will ever hurt you again as long as I'm here." That night, Veronica slept more peacefully than she had in years. For the first time in a very, very long time, she knew without any doubt that she was protected. She knew she was loved, and she knew her new story was only just beginning to unfold. Miranda sat slumped on the couch with a large glass of wine in her hand. Her hair was messy and uncombed, her eyes tired and bloodshot, but her anger and bitterness were still sharp as knives. "I should never have married into that cursed family," she muttered angrily to herself. "They are so incredibly unfortunate. And now look at what's happened. My entire life is falling apart completely because of them." She took another long sip of wine. Baby Tommy sat nearby in his walker, his small hands gripping the toy tray weakly. He looked noticeably weaker than before. His cheeks were sunken and hollow, his clothes hanging loosely on his tiny frame. He whimpered softly in discomfort. Miranda glanced over at him, feeling more annoyed than worried about his condition. "I already gave you medicine earlier," she sighed with frustration. "Why does absolutely nothing work to make you better?" The truth was actually very simple and clear. Tommy needed proper care, genuine love, and nutritious food consistently. Not anger, neglect, and constant complaints. But Miranda was completely blind to that truth. Her mind was constantly busy searching desperately for a way out of her problems. Then suddenly a thought flashed brightly in her mind. A selfish, glittering idea that made her eyes light up. If the company was failing anyway, why not just sell it completely? Sell the house too while she was at it. Take all the money and run. Move far away where no one knew her past or her mistakes. Start a completely new life in a different place. Her lips curled slowly into a smile. Then the smile grew bigger and wider. Yes, absolutely yes. That was the perfect solution. She could escape all this mess and leave everything behind. She stood up quickly, finishing her entire glass of wine in one long swallow. Then she walked over and scooped Tommy up into her arms roughly. "Tommy, my baby," she cooed with sudden false sweetness in her tone. "Mommy, the master planner, has figured absolutely everything out perfectly." She tapped his tiny nose with her finger playfully. "We're leaving this house very soon. This unlucky, cursed house. This place is the reason everything went so wrong. But don't worry at all. Mommy will fix everything." She kissed his forehead briefly and held him somewhat close, rocking him mechanically. "Soon, baby, we'll be completely free and life will be beautiful again." She walked into her bedroom, humming softly to herself, her mind completely full of elaborate escape plans. But she didn't know something extremely important. Fate was already moving forward, and the storm she had created with her own actions was on its way back to her doorstep. Miranda spent many hours searching frantically through every corner of the house. She opened every drawer, broke open several locked cabinets with force, and turned over countless boxes looking for important documents. At first, she was only searching for papers to help her sell the company and house quickly. But what she discovered was far more valuable than she had expected. There were multiple ATM cards linked to bank accounts she never even knew existed. There were official papers from 2 different banks that Mr. James had never mentioned to her. Then her hand suddenly paused when she picked up a sealed brown envelope that looked important. She slowly tore it open with shaking hands. Inside were Mr. James's legal will papers, the official documents showing that the company, the house, and most of his valuable assets were all legally willed to Veronica, not to Miranda at all. Everything belonged to Veronica by law. Miranda froze completely in place. Her chest tightened painfully. For a long moment, she genuinely couldn't breathe properly. Then her lips slowly curled into a dark, sinister smirk. So all of this was meant to be hers, she whispered to the empty room. Not anymore. Not if I can help it. She gathered all the documents carefully, folded them neatly, and placed them securely in her handbag. With this information and these papers, she could claim everything legally before anyone realized what was happening. Within just 1 week, she had packed all her bags completely and planned to travel out of the country permanently. Everything was almost ready for her escape, but she had no idea that someone else was making plans too. Mr. Richard had already started a thorough investigation into the situation. When he noticed the public notice that Mr. James's house was officially for sale, he arranged a meeting with Miranda, cleverly pretending to be a serious buyer interested in purchasing the property. He needed solid proof, something strong enough to expose her crimes and protect Veronica's legal rights. They sat facing each other in the living room, the same living room that once held so much laughter, family meals, and warmth. Miranda smiled confidently and crossed her legs in a relaxed manner. Mr. Richard, this house is absolutely perfect for your needs. It's big enough for renting out or resell for profit. It has a beautiful swimming pool, a large parking area, and steady electricity supply. Everything works perfectly. Mr. Richard nodded slowly, studying her carefully with sharp eyes. She was confident, perhaps too confident for her own good. He let his eyes wander slowly around the room, then deliberately pointed at a framed photograph hanging on the wall. It showed Monica, Mr. James, and little Veronica smiling together happily. "That's your late husband in the photo, correct?" he asked calmly. Miranda's face softened instantly. She placed a hand dramatically on her chest. "Yes, that's my husband. May his soul rest in perfect peace." She forced her voice to shake just slightly for effect. "And the little girl in the picture?" "Mr.?" Richard asked, keeping his eyes sharp and observant. "Your daughter?" Miranda inhaled slowly and nodded, fake sadness washing across her face like a mask. "Yes, she was my daughter." She paused deliberately, lowering her head sadly. "But she died tragically. Cancer took her away from me." A single tear rolled down her cheek perfectly. Too perfect and obviously practiced. Mr. Richards smirked very slightly. She was quite good at lying, but she had no idea that her lies were about to end forever. Mr. Richard had gathered more than enough evidence against her. He had audio recordings, official documents, written statements, and even detailed testimonies from neighbors who had witnessed things. Everything was ready and prepared. It was finally time for justice. He took Veronica to the police station with him. Together they sat across from the officers, and Mr. Richard explained absolutely everything in detail from the moment he had first found her lying injured on the dark road. Veronica's voice shook noticeably when she told her part of the story, but she didn't cry this time. Not anymore. She had grown stronger. The police officers listened carefully to every word, reviewed all the evidence thoroughly, and nodded with firm, serious expressions. They immediately arranged a team of officers to go with Mr. Richard. They were heading directly to Miranda's house to arrest her. Meanwhile, Miranda was in complete chaos and panic. She had already sold the house to someone, And today was supposed to be the day she would finally travel out of the country for good. Her bags were packed and resting near the front door, ready to go. But there was a serious problem she hadn't anticipated. Baby Tommy was extremely sick. His skin was burning hot with high fever. His little chest rose and fell, much too quickly and irregularly. He whimpered softly, too weak to even cry loudly anymore. Miranda paced the living room frantically in panic. "Why now? Why today of all days?" she muttered angrily to herself. Her flight was scheduled to leave in less than 60 minutes. If she missed that flight, her entire escape plan would crumble into nothing. Everything she had worked for and schemed for would fall apart completely. She scooped Tommy up roughly and grabbed liquid medicine, forcing the dropper between his lips. "Come on, drink this. You need to get better right now," she said desperately, but her hands were shaking uncontrollably. Tommy pushed weakly against her hand, crying softly in pain. Miranda's frustration only grew worse. "Just drink it. Don't make this harder for me than it already is." "Knock, knock, and knock!" She froze instantly. Who could possibly be at the door right now? The new buyer coming early? The real estate agent coming to collect her final payment? She stomped angrily toward the door, irritation boiling violently in her chest. "I already told that agent I'll leave today as planned. Why is she bothering me at the last minute?" she muttered angrily. She swung the door open and froze completely. Police officers in full uniform stood before her. Behind them stood Mr. Richard, and sitting in the police car, someone small, someone she never expected to see again in her entire life. Her heartbeat kicked painfully in her chest, but she forced a fake smile. "Officers," she said with false sweetness, "how may I help you today?" "Mrs. Miranda," the lead officer said officially, "you are under arrest for child endangerment and abuse." Miranda blinked in confusion, then laughed loudly and sharply. "Child endangerment? That's ridiculous. I have only one child. The baby in my arms is my only child. I think you have the completely wrong person." The officer didn't blink or hesitate. "You endangered Miss Veronica James." The name fell like a heavy stone in the room. Miranda's fake smile faltered immediately. Her fingers tightened around Tommy protectively. "I don't know any person by that name," she started to lie, and then Veronica stepped forward confidently. Her small hand was firmly placed in Mr. Richards' strong hand. She wasn't the weak, trembling girl who had left this house months ago. She had grown. She had found real strength. Veronica's eyes locked directly onto Miranda's. "No need to lie anymore," Veronica said quietly but firmly. "I'm standing right here in front of you." Miranda's breath caught in her throat. "Veronica, but I thought you were—" "Dead?" Veronica finished the sentence for her. "Yes, that's exactly what you told people. But I didn't die. I survived the hell you put me through." Miranda's mouth opened, but absolutely no words came out. Veronica continued, her voice strong but still filled with pain. "You hit me hard across the face. You starved me regularly. You treated me like worthless dirt. You threw me out of my own father's house like garbage." Miranda shook her head fast, tears already forming. "I was stressed. I was alone. I didn't mean—" "You called me cursed," Veronica interrupted. "But look at Tommy now. Look at what your kind of care has done to him." Miranda looked down at her son, his small, weak body, his pale face, and horror washed over her completely. One of the officers gently took Tommy from her arms, while another officer handcuffed her wrist behind her back. No, wait. Don't take him away. He needs me. Veronica, please. Please forgive me. Not for my sake, please. For my baby's sake." Veronica didn't move at all. She didn't look away. She simply said, her voice steady and strong, "I will take care of Tommy properly. I won't throw him away like you threw me away. I am not heartless like you." Miranda broke down completely. Her knees buckled as the officers pulled her toward the police van. Her dreams, her elaborate escape plan, her new life, everything crumbled into dust. The door slammed shut and the van drove away. Inside the house, Veronica stood completely still. The same walls, the same rooms, the same painful memories. It all came flooding back. Her chest tightened and her eyes filled with tears she had been holding inside for years. She turned toward Mr. Richard. He opened his arms wide. Veronica ran into them, burying her face in his chest. "It's okay to cry," he whispered gently. "You're safe now. Let it all out." And Veronica cried deep, shaking sobs. But this time she wasn't crying alone. Many months passed. Miranda sat behind cold prison bars. No longer the proud woman who once walked around in luxury. Her hair was rough and uncombed, her cheeks thin and her eyes empty. She looked nothing like the woman who once ruled a house with cruelty. Pain and regret followed her every single day, but now there was no one to hear her cries or care. Meanwhile, Veronica's life bloomed like a flower finally given sunlight. With Mr. Richards' guidance, she recovered everything her father had left for her, his company, the house, and all his property. Lawyers helped reveal the truth, and everything was returned to its rightful owner. Just as she had promised, Veronica cared for baby Tommy. Under her gentle hands and Sarah's warm love, Tommy grew healthier, stronger, and happier. His laughter filled the home, something Veronica once thought she would never hear again. They all lived together in Mr. Richards' house like a real family. Veronica went back to school, her smile bright and full of life. Mr. Richards stood by her always, the father she had long prayed for. He watched her grow into a beautiful, courageous young girl. Veronica had found love again, not through blood, but through kindness. True family is not only who you are born to, but who stands by you with love. Cruelty and greed may seem powerful for a moment, but they always lead to destruction. Kindness, patience, and courage can heal even the deepest wounds. No matter how dark life becomes, hope can always find its way back. The end. Thank you for watching. We love and appreciate all our viewers.